Hello, everybody from Biology 8. This is Miss Peachy, and we are looking at Unit 8, Lesson 7, Sources of New DNA Combinations. We are also going to be looking at Lesson 8, the discussion, in this video. So even though the discussion takes place in Lesson 8, the preparation for the discussion actually starts in Lesson 7. So I want to make sure that you know what it is you need to do for your discussion. So our keywords in the lesson, the content part of this lesson, are crossing over, mutations, homologous chromosomes, and adaptation, or adaptation, excuse me, adaptation. All right, so let's move ahead here. Some of this is going to be review. A lot of it's going to be review. So as I said, we kind of keep touching the same concepts, hoping that as we go through them over and again, that eventually, you'll come to some level of understanding. So again, we have inherited genetic variation, right? Mutations that can occur that can cause variation in a population. And those mutations can be caused by environmental factors, or they can include errors that occur during replication. So this shows a DNA sequence here, this picture. You can see all the CATs and Gs in here, kind of showing you the different bases. That's pretty cool if you ask me. That one of our sources of variation comes in meiosis when we do crossing over, which we've talked about before as well. This happens during prophase 1 of meiosis when we have doubled all of the chromosomes in the cell. So we have doubled all the chromosomes. So now we have homologous pairs, and these are the ones that replicated. So these are our sisters, right? These are sisters, and these two are sisters here. And excuse me. So we have sisters here, sisters here. This darker purple is homologous to the lighter purple. During prophase 1, they become entangled, and you can have some sharing of genetic material that happens, and you end up with recombinant homologous chromosomes at the end of the day. So they're still homologous to each other, but they've swapped a little bit of their genetic material. They don't trade areas that aren't the same, so you still have the same genes on them. They're just different alleles. So then it goes on to talk a little bit about Punnett squares again. So in a perfect world where there was no recombination that would happen, you could use a Punnett square to predict the offspring. So let's see here. What we're doing here is we're kind of doing a double Punnett square. I've never really seen anything like this before. It's a little bit like a dihybrid cross, but they do it all in 4 squares. So what they're showing you is 2 different traits. So the one parent here has a brown-eyed allele with the big B and a blue-eyed allele with the little b right here. Oops. Here we go. And so this parent here with big B, little b is going to be what we would call heterozygous. I'm just going to write that up here. Oops. So parent number 1 is big B, little b. That's heterozygous, meaning that they have brown eyes, but they still are carriers of the blue-eyed allele. So we know this person has brown eyes, but they're carriers for blue, right? So they're not, because you have 2 alleles. The dominant one is the one that's expressed, unless you have only in the situation where you have 2 recessives, that would be expressed. This parent over here, parent number 2, has little b and little b. So this parent has blue eyes, which the only way you can have blue eyes is if you carry both recessive alleles. So that parent will be a blue-eyed parent. And then parent number 1 up here has, it looks like, brown hair, big E, and they are homozygous for that. And that means that they carry both dominant, or homozygous means you carry two of the same allele. This parent here is homozygous recessive for eye color. This parent here is homozygous dominant for hair color. And then our other parent here looks like that they have brown hair, big E, little e, so they are heterozygous for hair color. They have one of each allele. So we can do a Punnett square. Um, this is an interesting, like I said, take. I've never seen it done like this before. Usually it's just like one trait that we look at a time, or we use like a very large grid to look at two traits, but I don't hate this. This is okay. So what they're doing here is they're just doing two separate crosses. So when you do a cross on a Punnett square, you look kind of like, I feel like it's kind of like a math problem. You bring down one allele and you bring over the other one, the matching ones. So we get big B, little b. And here we're bringing down, we bring down the E here, big E, bring over this little big E. So big E, right? So you do this for every section. Oops. Come on, man. I just want this. Okay. So it's making me move the screen. So there we go. Sometimes the tools here. There we go. So you bring that down and you bring this one over. You get the idea, even though my mouse isn't working like I want it to work. Down and over. There we go. So you do the same thing with the E's, right? So what we see here, let me go back of just to clear the screen. What we see here is we see that this is your potential offspring. So in order to have a blue-eyed offspring is a 1 in 4 chance, right? If I want a brown-eyed offspring, there's a 3 out of 4 chance that your baby will be brown-eyed because each one of these combinations is brown eyes. If I want a blonde hair offspring, there's no chance. You're going to have a brown-haired offspring because of the way in which this happens, right? You have biggie, 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 little e, biggie, little e. No chance for a blonde-haired offspring. So that would be the predictor of offspring using Punnett squares. The reality of the situation is, though, that crossing over does happen. And so you might be in a situation where your mom is blonde and your dad has brown hair, and you are also blonde. And according to classic genetics Punnett square, you'd be like, how did that happen? You know? But truthfully, it can happen through crossing over. If that allele for blonde hair was swapped in some way, you can end up with two of them and still have that blonde hair, even with, in spite of classic Punnett square genetics. Crossing over kind of then adds a level of unpredictability to the outcome of the kids, essentially, like what the kids are going to be like there. All right, so, and it goes on to talk a little bit about DNA replication and how this can be the source of errors. So remember, before any cell division, mitosis or meiosis, replication has to take place. So chromosomes are made, copies of chromosomes are made first. So if there's a mistake in this process and that DNA is not replicated correctly, then those mistakes can get passed on in meiosis to the offspring, right? And so during replication, the double helix of DNA has to unwind and then unzip. And then DNA polymerase has to actually copy it. It actually makes like a complementary strand. So it makes two new strands where once there was one. And in this process of either replicating it or of transcription in general, you can end up with mistakes. And one example is Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease is a mutation in the HTT gene that provides instructions for making the protein huntingtin. This protein is important for brain and nervous system function. If a mutation occurs on the HTT gene, it can cause uncontrollable movements, mental health disorders, and decreased ability to solve problems. So it's basically talking about how um, Santino, he wants to determine his possibility of chancing hunting or passing Huntington's disease off to his future children. And so he does a Punnett Square here. And he sees, you show the, let's see, Huntington's disease is dominant, so at least one allele would need to be dominant in order for the child to inherit Huntington's disease. So it's asking you then to solve this Punnett Square here. So do some practice with that. And then it talks a little bit about mutations can result from environmental factors. We've talked about that before, UV light from the sun, radiation, diet, or even stress. These mutations, remember, have to occur in the gametes or sex cells in order to be passed on to your offspring. Generally, sun, skin cancer, that type of stuff doesn't affect your sex cells. UV radiation can't penetrate that deeply, so it doesn't cause radical damage beyond just your skin. That's why it causes skin cancer and causes premature aging, but it's not going to go in and damage your eggs or sperm. However, other types of radiation can. That's a big reason why they put like big lead aprons on you when you go and get an x-ray done. They kind of want to protect, the gametes and all your other internal organs as well from excessive radiation. All right. So then going on here, the rest of this talks about this upcoming discussion you guys are going to have. And that discussion is, should people be more careful with cell phone use? And essentially it talks a little bit about, kind of the research regarding that. You have to read up on that. And if there's any link between cell phone use and cancer. So read these studies, right? And then it gets into the discussion guidelines and rubric and talks about kind of the things to think about before you make your discussion. And then this is very important as well, especially if you're new to WCA. When you respond to your classmates, you are expected to go beyond I agree or I disagree. You should include facts to support your answer. You may also question a topic or question a response and ask for additional clarification, support, or insight on the topic. So the expectation is this is a conversation. So you should be, you know, stating your kind of opinion or beliefs based on your research and then back that up with information. And then when you are responding to somebody else, you should also go beyond I agree or disagree and use evidence to support your stance as well. Discussions work best if you find somebody who does not have the same opinion as you. If you're finding somebody with the same opinion as you and you're just saying, yeah, good job, I agree with you, I posted the same thing, it's kind of a dead in the water discussion. So try to find somebody who has a differing opinion and discuss with them. It makes for a much more interesting conversation. All right, so then it goes on to give you more information about cell phone use and gives you the kind of the format that you need to use for your discussion. So if you are returning to WCA, the expectation is that we're kind of going a little bit more, I guess we're getting better into using our claim evidence reasoning, which is what science is all about. And I kind of like this. I'm actually really excited that they're doing this in the discussions. They're giving you this format. Claim. You make a claim. Answer the prompt. But then you also need to support that claim with evidence. Don't just say what you think based on what you've read, but support it. Use a quote or paraphrase from the sources. And it says from at least two sources. Those sources can be what you've read in the lesson. Because remember, you did some reading to prepare for this. And make sure you credit those sources. And then reason. How does the source provide evidence for your claim? Explain your thoughts. Don't just assume we can understand what you mean. You should always explain. So when I'm grading these, I'm going to be looking for those three things: claim, evidence, and reasoning. And if you don't have all three of those, you will be your score will be reduced depending on what you're missing, right? I'm also going to be looking that you post at least 2 responses. So for 2 different students, do you agree or disagree? And provide evidence to support why you disagree or agree. So those are the 2 components to that discussion. So make sure that you're following those guidelines and you have your claim, your evidence, your reasoning. You'll respond to 2 peers and provide support of your responses as well. Okay, so just kind of make sure you have all that information. That's everything in this lesson. I'm not going to do a video for lesson 8 because lesson 8 is just your discussion. So you're going to have click on this to be able to access the discussion. So this video is for both of those lessons. If you have questions, let me know. Good luck with it. It seems like an interesting topic to discuss and very relevant. Some of us sleep with our cell phones under our pillows at night. Shouldn't do that, but that's where my charger is. So I'm be interested in seeing the results of this as well. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk to you later.